All right, so on this example, the first piece of information they're giving us on this frequency table is 400 students. That part's always in there for you. You don't have to put it in. Now, as we keep reading, we're going to have to put in values into each box where it belongs. Sometimes it's a total they're talking about. Sometimes it's an actual value in the center. So let's read. Exactly 100 students recycle and compost. And is a key word here. If you see the word and, then you're looking at one specific box where both categories meet. So in this case, recycle and compost meet at this box right there. So that value goes exactly on that box. If it would have said or, that's very different. Or involves two different categories and the totals of both. So whenever it says or, your answer is going to be a lot bigger. So let's keep reading. Now it says 55% of students. So my total for students is 400. Now we just need to figure out the part that goes on top. The part is what we read here. Do not recycle. So for the do not recycle section, it didn't say compost or do not compost there. It just says do not recycle. That tells you it's a total value. So here, do not recycle. The total is what we get when we get 55% of 400. So multiply it, it gives us 220. So the total for do not recycle is 220. Now we keep reading. It says 35% do not compost. Now 35% of 400 is how much? 140. So for that one, it says do not compost. So do not compost total is 140. That's it. Once you have three pieces of information in there, we can fill out the rest. So let's fill out the rest by using addition or subtraction. Everything has to equal your totals on the margins. That's why they call this marginal frequency, because all your totals are on the margin. So 400 minus 140 is 260. 400 minus 220 is 180. So we already have the totals figured out. Now the three pieces in the middle, you can use addition or subtraction to figure it out. 100 plus what is 180? 80. 80 plus what is 140? 60. And 100 plus what is 260? 160. Now if you want to check your answer, just make sure that all your totals are equal. Any questions so far? So we did two examples like that in the morning. Now you got to try one and you saw the review after. Now we can move on to something similar to this. There's still frequency tables, but in this case, they're going to ask you questions about it. So on the next page, we're going to start off doing the same thing. We're going to fill in the empty spaces, but then at the end, you're not done. You have to answer A, B, C, and D separately. Notice on the right side, it's a different kind of question. On the right side, they give you all the empty spaces, but you have to check more than one box on what statements are true. So don't do it on your own. You're doing this together with me and doing one of these after on your own. So watch me do these two. So over here, let's figure out these empty spaces. Even though you don't have a total section, nothing's stopping you from writing the total next to that value. So here it says 60 males. So I'm going to put a 60 out here and 40 females. 40 females there. So I know those totals. Those totals are going to help me out in the future when I'm going to fill in the blank spaces. And now we have 60% of people surveyed preferred romance. So, 60%, how many people were surveyed? 100. Very good. It didn't tell you that, but it tells you that there's 60 males, 40 females. You add them up, it gives you your total. So now 60% of 100 is 60, which means the total for preferred romance is also 60. Now, with those three pieces of information, we can figure out all the empty spaces. So 35 plus what is 60? 25. Again on top, 35 plus what is 60? 25. And now 15 plus 25 is 40. Now all of our totals match, and we can get to answering the questions below. So let's look at these questions. First of all, A, B, and D ask you what percent. C asks you probability. So the only difference between how you do A, B, and D and C is that you're not going to divide at the end and move the decimal to change it to a percent. But the work is exactly the same. You just leave it as a fraction. A probability has to be a fraction answer. So let's set it up. The first question, what percent of males? Remember what I told you about the word of. What comes after the word of is going to explain what your total should be. So in this case, what percent of males? My total has to be 60. Because there's 60 total males. Now, of those males, how many preferred romance? 35. So now we're going to do 30 divided by 6, 35 divided by 60. Whatever you get, move the decimal twice, and that's your answer. That is the percentage. So 35 divided by 60, 58%. Any questions on part A? I'm going to try to color code it so you can see the difference. Now look at question B. Question B says, what percent of students? How is that different than part A? That my total, instead of being 60 because it's males, my total now is going to be 100 because it says students or people. If it says students or people, you include all the people that were surveyed. Now it says, what percent of those students preferred horror? So we go to the total for horror. The total for horror was 40. 40 divided by 100, 40%. Any questions so far? Let's go blue here. Now we get to answer question C. I say answer choice because it says A, B, C, D. Question C says, what is the probability that a student, stop right there. I haven't read the word male or prefers horror. I stopped when it says student because that tells me my total. Some kids got it wrong because they put the male total. But that comes after. What is the probability that a student? That tells you. It doesn't say that a male or that a female did something. It's that a student. So your total has to be the full total, 100. And now, is male and prefers horror. So there's something important to explain here. If you say and, you're looking for one specific box where these two things meet, male and horror. So male horror is 25. Now 25 over 100, you have to simplify it, not make it a percent because it's not asking for a percent. So that would be 1 over 4. Now, before we do answer or question D, look up here at the board. This is important. If you see the word and, then it was both things had to be satisfied. So both things have to be satisfied. What does that mean? That means you can only pick the number from male that prefers horror. Both things have to meet up to get one value. But if it says, instead of and, it says or, now your answer is going to become a lot larger because either one can be satisfied. What does that mean? That means that if you're a male, you're satisfied, you have to be included. And if you prefer horror, you have to be included. So let's see how our answer changes just with the word or instead of and. So we know our total is going to be 100. Now, what is the total for male? 60. But you have to combine it for the total of whatever else they're talking about. Prefers horror. What's the prefers horror total? 40. 60 plus 40 is 100. And 100 out of 100 is 1. So if they're asking for a probability, it's 1 over 1, which is 1. You have to leave it as 1. But if they ask you for a percent, what's 1 as a percent? 100%, not 1. Because think about it. 100 out of 100. Is that not everything? What percent is everything? 100% is everything. You with me? So the key thing there is when it's and, it's easier because you're going to one number. But when it's or, you have to add up two numbers together. Does that make sense? And now, question D. For question D, it says, what percent of females? What's my total going to be? What percent of females? 40. 40 is my total because the females is the only spot I'm looking at. Now, preferred horror. So you go to females, you go to preferred horror, and it was 15. So 15 divided by 40 equals how much? What is it? 37.5? Correct. 37.5%, or you could round to 38%. Any questions so far? Now, don't do the next one on your own. There's something I want to do before. I like to analyze this information first, right? Because a lot of these questions are going to be common sense. Right now, there's a couple percentage questions in there, things like that. But a lot of these questions are going to be common sense, like number 1 and 2. And you just have to pick true statements on these types of questions. So, I just want to circle the top part and analyze it, right? So, you either have a watch or you don't, or you have a cell phone and you don't. Some people have both, some people have one, right? So you could come up with a conclusion to this, not using numbers, just a conclusion to this, common sense conclusion. So watch. People who have a watch, how many people own a cell phone versus not own a cell phone? 30 versus 55. What does that tell you? That tells you that if you don't have a cell phone, you definitely have what? If you don't have a cell phone, what are you definitely going to have? A watch, right? If you don't have a watch, what are you definitely going to have? A cell phone. That's the two common sense conclusions you can come up with that. You understand? Also, let's say the bottom part here. On the bottom part, what conclusion can we come up with from here? That just tells you that if you don't have a watch, you definitely have a cell phone. How do you know? Because the number's 50 there compared to 25. You with me? Now, what if it says, who, uh, what, uh, what age group was surveyed to get these 25 results? What age group was surveyed to get these 25 on that category? So to help you out, tell me what two categories meet at that 25 mark. No watch, no cell phone. Use your common sense. Who in life has no watch and no cell phone? Who? Yeah, I just want a common sense answer. There's a bunch of right answers. You could say anything right now and it might be right. But what I'm saying is these conclusions are what you're looking at. What age group do you think gave us 25 results at no cell and no watch? Here's the question. Does your grandma have a cell phone? Yeah, mine does too. Mine's on Instagram all day, Facebook all day, right? So you think they're talking about old people that don't have a cell phone and don't have a watch? No, don't think about the other extreme to that. Who is it? Little kids. You understand? These are the kind of common sense questions they're going to ask you about data. You with me? So now that we understand how we're going to read this, let's answer these questions and only check the true statements. So look at the first one. People that do not own a cell phone are less likely to have a watch. Without even looking up there, you can answer this question using your brain and common sense. Right? So if you don't own a cell phone, then you're definitely going to have what? A watch. Does that mean he's less likely to have a watch? Of course not. That should be what? More likely. So A is wrong. And usually, if the first one's wrong, the second one's correct because both are related. So now let's look over here. People that do not have a watch are more likely to have a cell phone. If you don't have a watch, how are you going to tell time? By having a cell phone. So more likely is definitely correct. You understand what I mean by common sense? Now look at the next one. This is just reading the information. More people own a watch than do not own a watch. How many people own a watch? 85. How many people do not own a watch? 75. This is true then because more people own a watch than don't own a watch. Now, how do you think you're going to get a total by adding 85 and 75 together? This is considering everyone answered the survey. That's why you can add up any categories. It could have been sell, no sell. If you add them, it has to give you the same answer as watch, no watch, because everyone answered the survey. So now, 85 and 75 is 160. One says 150 people were surveyed. The next one says 160 were surveyed. Can they both be right? No. So you add them up, it gives you 160. You put an X on the first one, check on the second one, because 160 is the correct total. Now, this part here is super important, so make sure you pay attention, okay? Over here, it says 65%. I want you to ignore that 65% for now and do the same thing we did on the previous problem. Create your fraction, divide, and get a result. So watch, 65% of people who own watches. So what's my total going to be? It can't be 160 because my total has to be people who own watches. 85 is the total of people who own watches. So of 65% of the people who own watches do not have a cell phone. So now let's go to own watches and do not have a cell phone. on watch, do not have a cell phone, is 55. Now, 55 divided by 85 equals what? 64.7, which rounds up to 65%. Is that correct? Yes, it is. Check. Same process for the next one. Forget the 35%. You're going to verify that your answer is correct later. So for the 35%, it says 35% of people who own watches. So again, my total is 85, because that's how many people own watches, have a cell phone. So own watches, has a cell phone, is 30. 30 divided by 85 is 30.352, which rounds off to 35%. What do you know? It's correct again. Now, even though the 31% is over here on the right, on the last question, you're doing the same thing. Ignore that percent. Of the people who do not own a cell phone. So what's my total going to be now? Do not own a cell phone is 80. You with me? Now it says how many people that don't own a cell phone do not own a watch. So no cell, no watch is 25. 25 divided by 80, 31%. So this last one gets checked as well. So it's the same process, except you have to verify that the percent they're saying is true. If you notice, the main thing is they're getting the correct total in the bottom. That's where the mistakes usually happen. All of you are good at finding the spot where the two categories meet, but your total is wrong, your whole answer is going to be wrong. All right? Now try the next. All right, so let's put the totals here. 60 males, 60 females. Then 55% of students prefer horror. That means whatever we get when we do 55% of the students goes on the total for horror. So 55% of 120 is 66. Now we can fill out all the empty spaces. So 50 plus what is 66? 16. 50 plus 1 is 60. 10. And 16 plus what is 60? 44. Yeah. Some of you guys' worksheets was mixed up. So just in case, let's update that. Yours says 50 or 45? Yours says 45, that means it's the other version. Because both worksheets are identical. The one I'm giving you tomorrow is identical to what we're going through today, just version B, version A. So let me just copy version B over. All right, we're ready. So that other problem we had started is from your classwork tomorrow, because these two worksheets are identical, version A, version B. B is what we're doing now, A is what you're getting tomorrow. So here, 60 total on this side, 60 total for females. Now here it says 50% of students prefer horror. So 50% of 120, because it says students, is 60. So you know that 60 preferred horror. Now we have enough information to fill out the rest. So 60 minus 45 gives you 15 females. 45 plus 15 is 60. 15 plus 45 is 60. So we filled it up pretty easily there. Now, can any of you tell me a conclusion like we did on the cell phone and watches? A conclusion that you can come up with according to this graph before I do those questions down there. Anybody at home can try, anybody here can try. Give me a conclusion. It's common sense. When I say give me a conclusion, I just want you to use your common sense to explain those numbers to me in a way where I don't have to look at numbers. So, like what you said last time, if you have a cell phone, you probably don't have a watch. If you don't have a cell phone, then you definitely have a watch because you need time. So, same concept here, but it's about males and females relating to horror and romance. Give me a conclusion. What's the worst that could happen? It's wrong? Who cares? Just give me a conclusion. Hmm? You most likely what? Exactly. And now tell me the opposite end of that for females. Exactly. Isn't that common sense? Don't we know that without having a chart, right? Don't girls normally prefer romance or over horror, and boys prefer horror over romance? That's how real life works. This graph is just showing you common sense, stuff that you already know. You already knew that if you have no cell phone, you need a watch. You didn't need a table to tell you that. You understand? So these things are very easy, and the questions about them are a lot of common sense. So let's go through A, B, C, and D here. A says, what percent of students prefer romance? So my total is going to be 120 because it says of students, and prefer romance is 60 out of that 120 because the total for romance is also 60. So 60 divided by 120 is 0.5, 50%. Now here it says, what percent of males? That tells me my total now is 60 because there's 60 males. And what percentage of them prefer horror? So male horror is 45. 45 divided by 60, move the decimal twice, and you get 75%. So far, so good. Any questions? Now, what is the probability that a student, so before I read anything else, what is the probability that a student, that tells me my total again is 120? Now, and means both things have to be satisfied. It has to be female and prefers horror. So female horror is 15. Now divide. 15 divided by 120, 12.5% or 13%. But you can't answer as a percent, so just simplify that fraction. So both of these are divisible by what? Anything that ends in a 0 or ends in a 5 is divisible by 5. So 15 divided by 5 gives you 3 on top. 120 divided by 5 gives you 24. So 3 over 24 is the probability that a student is female and prefers horror. Now, the last one is meant to confuse you. Tell me what your answer is at home. What did you guys answer for question D? I'm gonna bug you until the end here because you guys need to learn this stuff. I get zero participation in like a month from this period. Student answers. What was your answer for D? Nobody at home tried it? Did I just not teach you anything, make you fail the EOC? That's what I want to do, getting that response from you guys. All right, boring class. Here's your boring teacher. How many students? The key thing there is understanding that they're not asking for a percent, they're not asking for a probability, they're asking for an actual amount of students. So all you have to do is look at one of these boxes, and one of these boxes will have your answer in it. It could be a total, it could be one of the boxes on the inside. So let's read. How many students preferred horror? First of all, if you read the statement up top, it tells you the answer. 50% of students preferred horror. So what you got when you calculated the total for horror, which is 50% of 120, 60, that has to be your answer. 60 people preferred horror. All right, let's move on. So on number 7, this is something you should be familiar with already. We did this last week. Now here, you get to see how this relates to frequency tables and stem and leaf plots. So first of all, let me label up top what you already know these things represent just to make it quicker when we review. The first dot is your minimum value. The last dot is your maximum value, minimum, maximum. The line in the middle of the box is the median. The left side of your box is lower quartile. The right side of your box is upper quartile. And between each dot, 25% of the data lands there. So all you need to remember is from space to space, each space is 25%. So from here to here, 25%, here to here would be 50, here to here, 75, from here to there is all of it, 100. So now we can answer these questions. What was the highest score on the test? Highest value is over here. That's 47. Next, what percent of the class scored above 21? So let's just mark where 21 is. 21 is right here. Above would be to the right or to the left? To the right. So how many spaces do we have from here that way? 3 spaces. 25% each space, 75%. Now, C says, what was the median score of the test? Median is the middle line. Middle line touches 32. What percent of the class scored between 21 and 41? So 21 is right here. 41 is right there. If you see, that makes up your box. Your box always makes up 2 pieces, which means it's 50% always. Lower quartile is the left side of your box, which is 21. Upper quartile is the right side of your box, is 41. Now, the last two say range on them. So we know we're going to subtract the biggest from the smallest. But if it's regular range, you subtract the biggest value 47 from the smallest value, which is 13. That'll give you 34. That tells you how spread out your data is. Your data is spread out across 34 units. But interquartile range is a smaller value because it's only asking you to find how spread out your box is. So from 21 to 41, how you find out the distance between those two values is subtracting. 41 minus 21, 20. Any questions so far? Now we get to relate this with stem and leaf plots. Now we'll answer all this later, but let me show you how you can grab the stem and leaf plot and make it look just like a box plot information. So, first of all, how you read a stem and leaf plot is pretty simple. In this case, the stem is the tens place and the leaf is the ones place. Now, sometimes the stem is a hundreds place. It tells you, right? In this case, it's a tens place. The leaf is a ones place. So, if you look at this, right? What is my lowest score? What? 42. So that tells me 4 is the tens, 2 is the ones, 42. What's my second number? Be careful. What's my second number? This is an important thing you can't forget what I'm about to say. What's the second number? Yeah, on this chart. Huh? No, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that because everyone says that. So it would be 50 if there was a zero there, because the one's value is a zero, right? But if you don't see a zero there, that tells you there's no values in the 50s. Does that make sense? So that's why it's important to have this example, because you need to know the difference between if there is a zero there, 50 is one value. If there's nothing there, that means no value falls in that tens place. So that means my second number is 67. My third number, 73. My fourth number, 78. 82, 84, 86. And 91, 94, 99. Now, isn't this the way your box plot information is ordered from least to greatest? So, let's not look over here for a second. Let's not look at your stem and leaf, and let's pretend we're making a box and whisker plot with this. How many values you have? 10 values. If it's an even amount, that means there's going to be 2 in the center. What two numbers are in the center? 82 and 84. You with me? So if it's two numbers, you add them up and divide by 2, it gives you 83, right? Now, the left side is this part. What's in the middle of the left side? 73. What's in the middle of the right side? 91. Are you with me? With that alone, we can answer 90% of these questions right now. But I'm not going to make you do it like this. This is just so you can realize that it's the same thing, right? Now watch. To find the median, you have to find the two middle numbers. The two middle numbers, if there's 10, is the fifth and sixth number, correct? So really, you don't need any of this. What you could do is come straight here. First number, second number, third number, fourth number, fifth and sixth. So what is the fifth and sixth number? 82 and 84. The same thing we got when we tried to figure out the median over there. It's 83. You with me? So now, how about with these numbers? There was 5 units, 5 numbers here, and over here, it was another 5 numbers, right? If there's 5 numbers here, which one's the one in the middle? The third one. What's my third number? 1, 2, 3. 73 is my third number. That's the same value we wrote down over there. Now, if it's the upper quartile, that means it's the third number also, but counting from the back. 1, 2, 3, 91. Same answer we got when we did it the long way. You understand? So creating a box plot or counting it here is the same thing as long as you count correctly from the back up or from here down. Another good hint here is figuring out how many values you have. Instead of counting out all the numbers you listed, just count your leaves. Because as you can see, 5 is a stem, but it has no value on it. So you can't count the stems. All you got to do is count the leaf. How many leaves you got? 10. That's 10 numbers you have. So now let's answer it. What is the highest score? 90 is the highest 10. What's the highest one? 9. So my highest score, 99. What is the lowest score? 42. Your median is the number in the middle. If there's 10 numbers, then the 2 in the middle are the 5th and 6th number. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these two numbers added together divided by 2 give you my median, 83. Now my lower quartile is the third number from the front. Upper quartile is the third number from the back. So third number from the front is 73. 1, 2, 3. And then the third number from the back is 91. Now range, biggest number minus the smallest. So 99 minus 42 gives you 57. And then the interquartile range is subtracting the upper and lower quartile. So 91 minus 73 is 18. Any questions so far?